there, my name's Gill Tiney. I'm from Collaboration Global, and this is our podcast, Being Human, Hidden Depths. I'm going to be interviewing some of our members from Collaboration Global, and they're going to be sharing with you their extraordinary lives. Although they would probably believe they're just normal, everyday, average humans, but they are extraordinary. A bit like you and me. We all have our story to tell. We've all been through difficult times, and we've come out the other end having learnt an extraordinary amount about ourselves that we can share with others. So I think you'll find lots of things that will resonate with where you've been in your journey as well. I look forward to seeing you on the other side. Hello and welcome to Being Human, Hidden Depths, the podcast by Collaboration Global. My name is Gill Tiney, and I'm delighted to be joined by a very special guest today, Ayo Deforge. Is that how I say it, Ayo?
Deforge.
Deforge. Okay, sorry, I beg your pardon. I should have asked you before we started, shouldn't I?
No, it's okay.
Ayo and I met via the usual means of LinkedIn many months ago now. And it was fascinating that I was able to hook her up with somebody straight away because she was interested in finding out where her poetry could be shared. So I introduced her to Harold Walter Asman, who is the founder of the World Mental Health Forum, so that she could support his summit last October. Was it last October or the October before?
Last October 2025.
Yeah. So that she could go and support him with his summit for World Mental Health Day that was over the course of a week. What was your impression of Walter? I mean, with Harold, rather. We've had a little conversation about it, but what was your impression of Harold?
I listened to there's this video link I listened to about when he talked about his experience with suicide, and I was really amazed to see that despite everything he's been through, he's still willing to help people, to share his experience, to help people going through the same thing. And I remember being amazed by the fact that that we when we see people, we have no idea what they've been through, and how I found him really strong, to talk about it and share it with people, be vulnerable, the vulnerability that he showed as a man, as and I shouldn't come from a place where men, normally show that kind of vulnerability. So seeing him, talk about it, and I was amazed. I was like, wow, I I felt that I didn't know if I would be able to, survive such a thing. And I felt like I was seeing someone who will be able to help so many people going through the same thing, thinking, am I going to be able to survive this? Do I have the capacity, the strength, the courage to to continue life, to move on, in fact, because sometimes it feels like there's some things we go through and we don't know how to move on. We want to stay in the dark. We want to stay by ourselves. And then there are people who say, I have to get up. I have to help people. I have to be strong for other people. And that was for me. One of the things that encouraged me last year to keep going and going with my plan to be able to help grieving children one day. And in Nigeria, in Nigeria where I come from.
I mean, it's so true what you say, is that there are times, I think most people have been through dark times, and it is that feeling of, leave me alone, don't talk to me. I'm just going to go and crawl into a corner and hopefully sleep long enough that it'll all go away and I can wake up and it'll be fine. It will be okay. And we all know in reality, it doesn't work like that. So knowing the pain that Harold has been through, and then you see him visibly on a Zoom call, proudly demonstrating the World Mental Health Forum, despite the heartache that he and his family have been through, gave you encouragement in your mission and your plans for what you choose to do, as you say, help children in Nigeria to deal with grief. Firstly, you're not in Nigeria at the moment, are you? You're in the south of
No,
France,
yes.
which is lovely. But also, would you like to share your story of how you came to that point that you realised
Mm.
this is your purpose in life, that you want to help these children?
In 1995, my mother died of cancer, and I was 13, and I think I was very angry, really.
Mm,
I was just, I did not understand the logic of, I had this logic as a child that, okay, my mother is the loving parent, she's nice, and um, she loved us. She used to take care of us, buy us gifts, and my dad wasn't the same way. And I felt that if there's a logic of someone, if death decides I'm going into this family, if the universe decides it, if God decides it, I'm going into this family, I have to take someone. It shouldn't have been my mom. That was my logic then.
mm,
And, I wanted to understand why God would, there was this injustice that I couldn't deal with, because I was like, God, you know everything. Why then take my mom? You know my mom will take care of me. And then why leave the dad that's going to take care of the children? Because he ended up separating us, my siblings and I. And I struggled with that. I then turned to poetry to be able to write and express myself. Then I couldn't say everything I wanted to say in writing short poems. So I turned to stories. And then later I started working on a novel to talk about how difficult it is to have to live with the injustice. And I used to go through very distressing period that I felt that if I should go to bed, when I wake up, everything will disappear. And then I'll wake up, my mom's still not back. I'll wake up, whatever problems I'm going through will still be this.
mm,
And I used to get this point that I'm totally distressed. And I'm like, I just need to sleep first. Once I sleep, then the problem is over. Then I'd wake up and then it will still be there.
yeah.
And over the years, I realized that not having therapy is part of why I had to deal with that.
Mm,
My mind telling me, "Oh, your mom is alive, or she's coming back. She's not dead." And then every time someone opens we had this gate downstairs that when someone comes in, you hear it. I'd run to the bathroom because the bathroom window opens out to
yeah.
see if she's back. And I I struggled with for a long time, and then we had this nightclub, and during the day they had put music, R&B music, American music, and I'd listen to all those love songs, and I was like, oh, these people miss their lovers. This is how I miss my mom. It give me ideas about how to write poems about missing my mom, and then I'd write about missing a lover, because that was what I was learning, and my dad would think, oh, you're just a girl. Who are these men, that you're writing to? But I was just writing to my mom as though, I had a lover that I was missing, or that
Mm,
was dealing with heartbreak. So many years later, I moved to France, and I was trying to have a baby. And then, the first year, second year, third year, fourth year, I got to the point where the doctors told me that it was naturally impossible. And then they suggested trying finding an egg donor. It's quite difficult in France because the black population is very low, and normally black people are still not willing to donate their eggs. I understand that maybe they worry about, oh, who am I giving my eggs to? How will the children be in a good home? They told me, oh, you have to go to Portugal. There are more black people in Portugal that are willing to, donate their eggs from Mozambique, Angola,
mm,
and countries that are I speak Portuguese. So my husband and I, we got in touch with a fertility clinic and they helped us. And then I was pregnant finally, and I was really happy, like I'm going to have a baby. And then I had to put myself in this mindset that I'm going to be a mother. You know,
Yeah.
I had to walk through the fact that, okay, this is not my egg, but I would love the child like mine. Then I'm asking myself questions. If the child asks me for something and I say no, would I say that that's because it's not my child, or am I, I had to start thinking about that. Then I made peace with that. And like, just
Yeah.
when you get to the river, you think about crossing it. Just have the baby now. And I was so happy, but it got to a point we had to do the second I think it was a second trimester scan or something like that, second scan,
Mm-hmm.
the second scan, and I was told that the baby was sick and that the baby will die at any time. And then I entered that place of distress
Yeah.
where I was like, if I sleep, I'll wake up, it's going to be a dream, everything's going to go away. And then you wake up and you start going around knowing that the baby is going to die anytime, and I wanted to fight for the baby. And they were telling me these things in French, and even though my French was not better than my English, I had to turn to English, go to Google, ask, what's this? What is this?
Mm.
Is it a cure? I mean, France, the doctors are good, everything is, we have healthcare, it's going to be okay. And then the more I searched, and I didn't get, the kind of feedback that I wanted, and it got to the point where I had to accept that, even though they were going to do this amniocentesis, centesis or
Mm-hmm.
something. I think in French it's amniocentesis, and in English maybe amniocentesis or something like that.
Amniocentesis, yeah, it's
Yeah.
where they draw fluid from the baby to find out if
Yes.
how well it is, basically.
And we were waiting for feedback, to know if to let go or not.
Right.
But the doctors didn't, wait for the results. They said it wasn't getting any better. We had to stop it. And then I had to deal with, you know,
Mm.
letting go. I'm like, this is too much for me. I'm human. Don't ask me for the right to take another life.
Yeah.
And then I started searching. I'm like, okay, is it that, um, is it like here they don't like children that are, handicapped?
Mm.
Because it's heavy for the social security, because pressure was too much. I
Mm.
wanted to keep it, and then it kept sending me doctors and therapists and telling me, oh, it's going to be difficult, it's going to be hard. Are you sure you can go through it? You think you can carry the baby now because she's in your belly? But what about when she's 3 kilos, 5 kilos, 15 kilos?
Yeah.
And it was too much. I was praying to God, help me, save this baby, please help me. I'm like, give me one life back. You've taken my mom, just give me this life. I kept begging and I kept begging,
Mm.
and then one day I couldn't go to church. I was watching this French church, and there was a woman who came out and said exactly my story. It
Wow.
was incredible. I'm like, God is telling me, because God said, oh, this child, this news has made you sad, but I'll tell you, you'll have this child and there'll be nothing wrong. And I'm like, for me to be sitting right here now,
Mm.
then it's the same story, really. Like, my baby's going to be okay. No matter what they tell me, I'll keep the baby. And the very moment I said that, I just heard, but I didn't promise you that. I'm like, who said that? I was, I didn't know. I was like, who said that? I heard that. And then I wanted to say, I didn't hear it, but I heard clearly. I didn't promise you that. So I cried. I went to tell my husband, like, we need to let go now. We need to let go. And he said, no, I want to wait for the genetic result. And I said, I think we have to let go. Then finally he said, okay, I'll write to the doctors, because they had written us when we hadn't responded. I was crying, saying they're putting too much pressure on me. I don't know what to say. I don't want to have the power.
Mm.
And then I remember calling my pastor in Nigeria. He prayed for me and he said, let go. And I'm like, I'm sure God will not want us to let go of a child because a child is sick. But I kept remembering that I heard clearly, I didn't promise you that. I didn't say that to myself. I heard it.
Mm.
Like, I'm not crazy. I did hear that clearly. Then we told the doctor it was time. They prepared me. I let go of the baby. Sometimes I'll be like, maybe she'll come out alive. Even though they told me put the injection in, she's gone. I didn't even
Mm.
couldn't say goodbye. I didn't know where I was. It was just too distressing. Everything was going too fast, and I just kept saying, okay, I still have more eggs, because the donor, we got like five. I'm like, I still have more eggs. I'm pregnant. I can get pregnant again and I'll have another child. But after the whole thing, my mind, I was like, oh, I don't want again. I didn't know where to start from. I didn't know. I was like, do I start from before the doctor suggested egg donor? Because I had made peace with it. I'd seen people at my workplace without children and they were happy. I'm like, we will joke about it. Oh, we will end up in the same old people's home, and somebody said, okay, why don't you do it in Corsica? And then we had an English lady that said, once there's a bar, I'm going to come, I'm like, oh, we'll end up together. And I kept telling myself, I can survive. I've seen women, I'm like, you need to let go of your culture in Nigeria that tells you you need a child, to make you who you are. Look here where you are. People are happy without a child. I tried to get up to have a new life because I was struggling with where do I start from now? Before the baby, after the baby, how do I go? And then my mind started again to help me, just like I was a child telling me my mom is coming back. My mind started again and said, oh, you're dying now. Everything dies. Your mother dies. Your
Mm.
child is dead. It's you next. You've not even written all the books you have in your computer. And then like a crazy person, I'm writing, I'm back to like, oh, I have to finish this book. I have to finish this story. Oh, this poem is not finished, this essay. And then
Wow.
I turned to essay. I was writing angry essays about so many things, but it's just trying to get everything off.
Mm.
And then finally, in 2024, I woke up one day and I was pregnant just like that.
Oh.
No help, nothing at all. No injections, no IVF, no egg donor, nothing at all, nothing. Even the doctor had said that it's naturally impossible because I don't have eggs anymore.
Mm.
And then I have a baby now who is 15 months, and I
Oh.
just kept saying, yeah, sometimes, the, the difficulty to let go, when I was saying, why don't you give me this baby? A life for a life. You took my mom, give me this child.
Yeah.
My mind couldn't conceive the fact that, God could give me another child, but of my own DNA. It was impossible because I had limited my mind to what the doctors told me that it was naturally impossible. It was just naturally impossible. So sometimes when I think about the Bible and when somebody said to Jesus, help my faith, I
Mm.
realized it's possible to help somebody's faith. I didn't know it was him because we can do so many things, but once we limit our minds, then, I had limited my mind to, I can only have a baby through an egg donor. And I'm
Mm.
like, I have these eggs here, this is it. This is my hope. And then even the doctors, they asked me, did you do IVF? No, I didn't do anything. I just woke up and I was sick and I couldn't eat. Everything was disgusting. And, all through I had to deal with my mind saying, something will happen. Every scan, you go back to, and I kept saying, this is not the same thing. This is not the same thing. Sometimes my mind would say, oh, you have weak eggs. The baby cannot stay. And there's so many things came up and I just kept saying, this is a baby that God has given me. This one will live. This one will live. This one will be alive. And also, I had thought that, okay, I had dealt with grief as a child, as an adult, that I will deal with it better.
Mm.
But I was shocked that we don't master grief, in fact,
No.
and they're different, but I had this friend that had gone through it and that told me, you'll be able to get to a point that the pain will not, it won't be so bad. It won't be what is dictating your life.
Mm.
And then I'd gone through all the process, let go of the box. I came back with some things from the hospital when I put in a box. I got to the point of letting go, also of letting go because I wanted to hold on to the baby. Like I need proof to say I was pregnant before because
Mm.
I didn't see the baby because I immediately started bleeding, and they told my husband to leave and all the doctors and the there were so many doctors, student doctors, nurses, midwives, they were trying to save me. But I
Yeah.
was just saying, oh, I'm going to die in France like that, you know, because I was bleeding and they were trying the blood. They were trying, I was feeling them like mopping me from inside and I could see the panic in their face.
Mm, mm,
But when they stopped the blood, they were like, oh, Madame Deforge, we're sorry, but we had to, that we had to all come together to try and see. They were trying so many things to try to stop the bleeding. And they were so kind to me. They were so kind to me. They
mm,
were so patient with me because I could have gone back home in a bag. This something like this might happen in another country without all these professionals around, and
mm.
I lost a lot of blood in a matter of minutes. In a
Yeah.
matter of minutes.
Yeah.
And as at that time, there were so many doctors, and they were like, okay, maybe immediately they'll put me to sleep and try and remove the womb. And it got to a point when they reduced the blood, I was still bleeding for days, and I was in pain. I was like, let go of the womb. I'm like, let go. They said, no, we want to save your womb. You want to have another? I said, no, I'm done now. Take away the womb. The pain is too much. And I was begging, I was in pain. I was groaning like an animal,
Mm,
because I had to blow up the womb to try and find out was bleeding. And I was like, I don't want the womb. I'm never going to have a child. I promise you, just take away the womb.
wow.
And they kept the womb because if they had listened to me,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have had my baby today.
Wow. He was meant to
And
be,
I'm
wasn't he?
grateful to every one of them for
Mm,
not listening because the pain was talking. It wasn't me, it was
yeah.
just the pain.
Yeah.
And they were professionals and they did not. I've heard about statistics in the US, about Black women dying in childbirth at a very high rate. But
Yes.
here are doctors that took care of me,
Yeah.
that listened to me. There was a woman that got me pain medication when I became, I don't know what she gave me, and I was able to sleep. And I just kept thanking. I'm like, thank you,
Mm,
thank you, thank you.
mm.
And I don't know their names. It was COVID. Everybody was wearing masks, you
Wow.
know.
You
But
poor
my
thing.
heart is with them
Yeah.
forever. Grateful, grateful, because I'm not in my country. I'm alone and people are taking care of me
So have you had a
like
chance to find out who it was? Have you gone back to the hospital to see?
the whole team, we thank the whole team because I was there for 10 days,
Gosh.
because so
Yeah.
in between it took me 2 days to give birth to the still child.
Oh.
I had different people, there were students because it's the
Mm,
teaching hospital.
yeah.
We have people going, changing, different times. The people will come and I'll beg them for what I couldn't eat or drink because in case they had to remove the womb. And I felt like the man in the Bible begging for a drop of water. And
Mm,
they'll put a gauge in water and just say, oh, just suck on it a bit. So there were people just coming in and being kind, kind. I
yeah.
remember recently, after I wrote a memoir, Grips of Grief, to talk about how I have had to deal with grief. A girl from secondary school wrote me and said, "Oh, I read your book and I'm sorry. In fact, I didn't realize we saw you in school, but I didn't realize what you were going through. And I couldn't have even helped because I didn't have the tools to help you, even as someone who had both my parents." And I'm like, you didn't have to do anything. You were kind. And I remember that. And that's enough.
Mm,
That was enough because when I think about you, I remember that you were kind to me.
yeah.
And so this is part of also the reason, why today I'd like to talk about grief in children, and is that other children don't have to take up the work of therapists or parents. All they have to do is to be kind. Parents teach children to be kind to all children. Without we don't want them carrying the load of the pain
No.
of other children. We don't want them being the therapist that the grieving child needs.
Mm. I think this is
Mm,
where a lot of people, from the outside looking in, if they know the story of what's gone on, of who's died and what tragedy has occurred, they feel awkward and they don't know what to say and they want the right words
mm,
to say to go in and make that person feel better. And they have to acknowledge to themselves that there are no right words to make that person feel
mm.
better. But saying something and being kind is the best thing you can do. And I think probably not saying anything at all is the hardest thing on that person that is suffering, because you feel like you're isolated and you feel like you're alone. It's almost like you're contaminated by the
Yes.
grief that you're having to
Mm.
bear. So for children
Yes.
to understand clear, and they take it so simply and so clearly. Your friend Ayo has lost her mummy, and so she needs a cuddle sometimes, and they would probably do that, and it's like they would just come and understand that that's what was needed. But to be able to teach them in schools of how you can help, then all of a sudden you've got another generation as adults
Yes.
that
Mm.
understand what to do. So what have you
Yes.
done so far in your journey to helping children in this way?
So far, with that, there are two things that I'd like to, focus on, which would be, getting grief counselors for children in schools, and
Mm.
also, including grief management in school subjects. And right now, um, sometimes I tell myself that I'm not a therapist. Why am I talking about grief? So I have to remind myself that I can talk from a place of lived experience.
Yeah.
And so now I'm in the south of France, and I I'm starting out to figure out how to be able to first show adults that this is something we need to look at here. Children might not be talking about the grief with adults, but they're dealing with it. It's not because they're running around the next minute that they're not thinking about it. Sometimes you wake up at night to pee, and then
Mm.
before you fall asleep, you're alone with yourself. And then
Mm.
you're thinking about this pain that I have a friend, a colleague at work, when during COVID, they found out she had cancer, and she had a child my age. It was, I had to bring back, come back to myself and say, okay, this is how my mother was then, seeing her child, knowing that, she's leaving, and I've been followed, I've remained friends with the child who is 15, 16 now, and he tells me he still sees therapy, a therapist, and he said that he doesn't like to talk about it, that because he has to continue, and I understand that, and I appreciate that. And
Mm.
I let him know that if he needs to talk, that I'm here, and we talked about it a bit. And I said, well, this happened to me too when I was 12. He said, just like me? I said, yes, just like you. And you see, I'm okay today because you'll get to that place where you'll be okay.
Mm.
So sometimes he just calls me out of nowhere and we just talk about, life. And he tells me I'm doing well in English,
Oh.
and I stayed in contact because I have my mother's friend came to, get my siblings and I once, and we spent time with her children. And he made me see, oh, she's my mom's friend. My mom worked at the bank with this woman. I did have a mother. I know where she worked. I know her friends.
Mm.
So I'm trying to be the same thing for this child to say, oh, she was my mother's colleague. I used to go to my mom's office. I used to see her, and he likes to call me and speak to me in English. And so I'm starting out this way. I'm talking about grief in my books. My first book, TLS, is me showing how children have to deal with grief by themselves without therapists, how it's going to affect. I had to show from childhood to adulthood, how
Mm.
it's going to affect the child, and how if we want a better society, then we have to deal with children that are grieving now. We cannot leave them to themselves. Then I've worked on my memoir, Grips of Grief, to show the same thing, to show how when I was angry, I was making not very intelligent decisions, which
Mhm.
was why I lost my ovary. And then I didn't have eggs. And then I had to deal with the consequences
Mm.
of the life that I lived when I was angry, when I did not understand what's the purpose of going to school if we're going to die.
Yeah.
What's the purpose
And nobody
of
knows
of
what's going through those children's minds, do they? And I think a lot of schools will go, oh, we don't have a budget for a grief counsellor. That's maybe there's one or two
yes.
children. We can't spend the money when we should be spending the money on all of the children, but only one or two children need it at the moment. But if we are all considered grief counsellors from the point of view of all we have to do is sit and listen, when that child makes those noises where they do need to talk or want to
Mhm.
talk, as adults, we should all be available to them, or there should be a space in the school they can go to, or like the friendship bench in the playground. I'm feeling a bit sad, and you can just go and sit there, which means that that child is feeling sad. So any adult can go and sit next to them and go,
Yes.
how are you doing? What's going on? Let me help you. And I think just having someone to listen to and just verbalize what makes you feel sad that day does, and that
Yes.
that adult helping them reframe it in some way. One, just listening, because that's powerful in itself, because it's like, I've seen you, I've heard you,
How do
I
you
understand you.
stand you? Yeah.
I've had a similar thing. Possibly most
Mm,
adults have experienced death at some point by the time they hit
mm,
sort of 25. And that speaks volumes to that child
mm,
anyway.
mm.
But if then they can actually get some advice back, going, well, when I went through something like that, this is what I did. You might do something,
Yes.
no
Mm.
pressure on them to do anything whatsoever, but just giving them something else to think about, even if it's just, oh, Mrs. Smith, she's been through it as well, or she knows somebody that's been through it, and so I'm not on my own. That in itself takes the weight off of the heart, doesn't it? To know that you're not the only one that's been through it.
Yes. And it's not even just losing a parent. It can be, maybe a grandparent or a friend, or
Yeah,
your friend moves away. It's the same pain.
yeah,
Or you move away yourself from where your friends are. You're in a new place. The pain, the grief, pain can be losing a pet. Losing your
yeah,
cat, for
yeah.
example.
Or even parents
And
breaking up. You still see your mum and dad, but they're just not together anymore. It's very hard to understand as a child why that's happened.
yeah,
And then quite often they
in
feel
divorce,
dreadful.
yes.
Yeah,
And also, the counselor can also give the grief management classes, for example, so that it's
yeah.
not like they don't have anything to do all the time. They can also, and what we do not realize is that it's not just helping the child at that time. We're creating a better society because we have
Mm,
adults that are not going around with pain, that are not hurting people because they are feeling hurt,
mm-hmm.
and that they can be better parents themselves.
Yeah,
They don't have to, make this turn to alcohol or turn to drugs, for example, or even suicide to
yeah,
deal with the pain. And sometimes some people keep hurting without not being able to go back and trace the reason for the pain that they're going through. And now I just finished writing a, a story for children between 12 and 14 thereabout, and I've asked a few people to read it and give me, feedback. And someone told me, oh, I think that this topic is too heavy for children. And,
uh,
I thought about it. I went back to a few other people and they're like, some other people told me, no, I don't think so, because we cannot shy away from this topic. The problem we have is that we don't even want to talk about it.
mm,
Like they told me, oh, your mom has gone to heaven. You don't have to talk about it. Or when you lose a child, they tell you, oh, you should be grateful you're alive. You could have died with the child.
yeah,
They don't mean to hurt you,
no,
but sometimes they feel that you have to be strong and move on. But not everybody can be strong about all cases and move on.
mm,
It's not some. We're not all the same thing it's not, how do I say it? We are not equal, on with regards to the way we deal with grief.
no,
Some people are able to get up and say, okay, I'm done. I'm not going to think about it. I'm moving on. And
mm,
some people will struggle, some people will run
mm.
to get to healing. Some people will walk, some people will crawl, and some people will, have a hard time even taking the first step.
Yeah, yeah. And I think as well, it depends on who you've got around you, how you communicate with those people, how you're used to communicating. If you don't talk generally about things,
Mm,
it's going to be tough. If you have a faith, if you've got a tumultuous childhood, or if you've been, everything's been really steady, you're going to come at it from different experiences and different angles. If you were to give your uh, young self, the same age you were when your mum died, what was that, 13,
mm.
did you say?
Okay, we.
13. If you were to talk to your 13-year-old self as a counsellor, as somebody who maybe has been trained in grief counselling, but also
as someone that's been through it, what do you
Mm.
think she would need to be told, or what do you think she would need to have from you?
Mm. I'm not, because I'm not a therapist, a specialist in it. I don't know if what I'm going to say now will be helpful to all children. But I think that what I would have loved to be told then, is I would have loved someone to make me understand that everything dies
Mm,
and there's a time for everything. I didn't understand that. I felt that death was for adults, old people, because when old people died, we would have parties, we would
yeah.
celebrate, and my mom, they didn't do that because she was young and her parents were not allowed to go to the burial because in the culture you're not supposed to bury your child then therefore you shouldn't go. So already I felt like there was something wrong. And
Yeah.
then I remember that in class, I think with a girl, we had an argument about sitting space or something like that. And she said, "Oh, you motherless child." And I
Mm,
remember thinking, "Oh, this is something to be ashamed of, that there's something wrong with me. I'm different from everybody now."
wow.
But what I didn't understand really, even though I knew that, ants died and butterflies died, I really wish that someone had sat me down and said that, you
Mm,
know, everything dies really,
mm,
and I don't know if that will also cause another problem with me thinking, oh, I'm going to die soon, or I don't know. But it took me a long time to realize that, in fact, nobody's going to escape it. In fact, we're all going to die, and that there's a beginning and an end.
yeah.
There's a season for everything, and that as at that time, my mother had, completed her season, and it was time to go. But because she had said that, I had seen that she didn't want to go,
Mm,
and that she said, "Oh, pray for me, and if you pray for me as a child, and that we had sinned less, and
mm,
that God would hear us." So I was like, God wasn't listening to her because she had sinned a lot, and that we were kids. And so after praying and even trying to fast, and then she died, I was like, "Oh God, how is it possible that you won't even hear children?" And
mm,
that was why I was angry with God that you could
yeah.
have saved her. I was going to the Catholic Church, and they said, we had this prayer that says, only say a word and my soul will be healed. So I was like, oh, God can say one word and correct everything. So why don't you just say leave and then make her leave? So I had all these questions and I didn't have anybody to ask. I
Mm,
didn't have answers. I couldn't ask the questions and answer myself.
no, no.
If you think about my culture, also as someone from a Christian home, I have questions from different aspects of life. And if I'd had a therapist, should have been able to answer maybe the question based on the Yoruba culture, why parents can't bury their children, answering questions about God and
Yeah.
death, and then also questions in, how people see, the girl that said, "You motherless child," for example. There were so many questions just going around in my head and turning ups and down.
Mm,
And it took me years to come back to it and say, okay, nobody's going to escape death. And then I finally had a discussion with my pastor back in Nigeria, and he told me about himself too. And his mother died of cancer and everything. And he told me, oh, all those thoughts you have about your mind. Every time I want to pray, my mind will say, you want to pray to the God that couldn't save your mom. And he told me he had all that too. Like, oh, he had all that and he's a pastor.
mm,
How do you
mm.
pray to the same God that didn't save your mother? And then he helped me, he told me how he just told me once, okay, he said, let me ask you a question. What if you're able to talk to your mom today and she tells you, oh, I am so nice where I am. I don't want to come back. What would you say?
Oh.
And then I let go of everything. That was the first day I actually let go
Yeah.
because I realized that all this fight, all this anger comes to the fact that I'm fighting for my mom. She wasn't ready to go. You shouldn't have taken her. I want her here with me. She wasn't
Yeah.
ready to go.
Yeah.
And then now somebody's telling me, what if she's in a better place? And then I started saying, oh, funerals are for us. It's for us, it's not for them. Maybe they're in a better place. Maybe they're not suffering
Yeah.
anymore. But
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that I want to end my life and commit suicide. I have to, while I'm here, make it worthwhile,
Mm,
while I'm here. But then it doesn't mean that because she's well, before you leave, you don't know where you're going to. So we are scared, And then she said, "Oh, pray for me," out of desperation. She didn't know that by saying that to us, that if we should pray for her as a child, without saying, she didn't know the weight it would leave. And I
Yeah.
had to carry that cross with me,
Yeah.
And I had to do all this fight for my mom. And then he tells me, "Oh, and if she tells you that she's happy," and then I let go. I'm like, "Okay, you're right now."
Yeah.
She
Wow.
could be saying that she doesn't want to come back.
So you you have a beautiful way of remembering how you felt really strongly at that age. So I can see that your passion for helping and supporting those children is huge, and hopefully in Nigeria, in France, around the world, if you can get your books written and out, as well as the poems that you write that will be supportive, even if they can access that online, and they can, if they're searching for something, then they can find you and just read something that will have that, just like the priest did for you. Say that one question, ask that question to make them go, "Oh yeah, I hadn't looked at it like that before. I hadn't
Mm,
considered hadn't considered that."
yeah.
So what can we do for you, for the people that are listening to this now? What would you like them to be able to do to either support people that they know that are suffering with grief at the moment, or to support your cause and what you're doing?
So I believe that, if we have children around us, and dealing with grief, we can try to, I don't, it depends on how close you are to the child, that the child will be able to open up to you about, what they're going through. But you can buy them books, for example, that
Mm-hmm.
can help. Books can really, really help,
Mm.
and also, if there are books for children about age-appropriate books, about writing, journaling, it does help. Also, if you cannot, if your parents can't afford therapy, if you don't have therapists in your school, in the school, or being able to write out. I think there's something about writing that, it feels like when you have everything bottled up, sometimes you can pour it out,
Mm.
and just write it out. And it your mind will let go and say, "Okay, I've written some things down." You don't have to hold on to everything. So
Mm.
age-appropriate books will be good. And if you are close to the child, and the child you can get the child to ask questions. You might not have the answer, but you
Mm.
can find the answer and,
Mm.
take it back to the child. You don't have to have the answer immediately,
No,
you know.
that's a good point.
And yes, remember their birthdays, that
Mm.
the parent would have remembered. Remember, them during Christmas to get them a gift, something. My mom used to put the Christmas tree, put the gifts. My dad didn't care for all that.
Mm.
And this holiday time can be really heavy for children who are missing a parent, because everybody's celebrating. I
Mm.
had this blockage with the fact that everything we used to buy used to come in six, and we were a family of six, plates, spoons, and then every time we got something, I'll be like, "We'll never be complete. My mom will never come back. It will never be six," and I had to deal with that. And then, holidays were never the same again.
Mm.
Without my mom, it wasn't the same. And now in my journey, I'm still writing about grief. I'm starting to be known as a writer that writes about grief, and in such a way that I get people to see it, you know, the way a child sees it.
Mm.
And um I feel like it's a journey. I'm not trying to rush to the end. I'm taking my time. And so now I have this children's book about young girls, dealing with grief. And I'm not even sure if, I still probably have to, check with the therapist, because it's about a group of girls, a group of young girls that are missing either a father or a mother. Because I realized that over time in my life, I used to just make friends with people missing a parent. Yeah, I didn't do it,
Wow. Yeah.
intentionally. I just realized that my friends, that it just seems that you make friends with people that understand you,
Yeah.
you understand them, and which was what I did in this book. But I don't also want to make children believe that they can be friends with people who have both parents also, so I'm also working on a book titled Writing as Therapy. And it's just me collecting everything I have worked on over the years, the poems, the essays, there's always a touch of grief. I'm trying to put it together that people, adults that are dealing, with grief or unresolved grief, can look at it and say, okay, I can do something with it. I can either journal, I can use poetry, I can use essays, I can use short stories. And then I also have the book, another one called Grieving Children, but this one is going to take a long time because I have to go into research, I have to speak to therapists, I have to speak to children that had therapy, that didn't have therapy, and adults that, have been through it, how, to try and show people that had therapy as children, as adults, how are they faring, and those that didn't have. So it's a longer project, but I'm collecting materials little by little. But I will eventually, but this is my journey. It's all working there so that by the time I get myself before, the people in charge in the federal government, the state government, I can, show them, what I've done so far. And then there are people who now understand me, and what I'm doing, bringing, so many people have gone through grief, but not everybody. We can all tell stories, talk about what we've been through, but not everybody might really, know how to put it into a story as a theme, without teaching, without, preaching, just leaving it there for people to see, the effects of grief in children when it's unresolved, when it's untreated. And yeah, this is where I am today. And I hope to be able to get adults to see that we need to help grieving children, not just for grieving children alone, but for the society as a whole.
Yeah. Oh, it's
In
definitely
building a better
beneficial.
society.
It's definitely beneficial, not only for the children, but it's that if you imagine all those children that haven't been supported and helped, and they then grow up, it's, as you were saying, hurt people hurt people. So if they've been suffering, then somewhere along the line, it's going to manifest itself in another way in their life. So
Yes.
if we can get either counsellors or therapists into schools, or at least get the training into schools so that every adult becomes a therapist or a counsellor for those children. And simple things, like I say, having a bench in the playground that says, I'm a bit sad today. And you can go and sit there, just you haven't got to say a word. You haven't got to go up to an adult and go, I'm feeling a bit sad. You just go and sit on the bench, and then somebody comes and sits next to you and holds your hand and makes you feel a little bit better. All sorts of things that can be done. In the meantime, I'm assuming you'll be helping Harold out again with his summit in October, hopefully. If somebody wants to get hold of you, what's the easiest way to have a chat with you?
I'm on LinkedIn, but I'm more active on Instagram.
Oh, okay.
That's the only place I'm really, I go often to check my, messages, and everything I'm doing when I have workshops, when I have a new book coming out, is I mostly announce it on Instagram.
What's your Instagram handle?
Yes, it's Ayo Deforge. It's my name.
The same one. Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing your story. A lot of people will resonate with that journey, or at least know somebody that's been through one of your experiences at least. In fact, today, 19th of January, is my godson's birthday, and he died at the age of 22. So I know that his mum is going through it today, remembering him for the good times, but obviously missing her. Yeah, and it's there are more people than you realize have got residual grief that's always kind of hanging around. And when it's raw and it's just happened, you feel like you're never gonna get out of bed again. And then 10 years, 20 years down the line, it morphs into something stronger, and it feels like, as I believe, that they are still with you, and they are always with you in some form or another. the same way that you heard those words when you were praying, we are being looked after in different ways. And sometimes the wisdom of the universe or God or whatever you want to call it doesn't answer our prayers straight away. But in the long run, we can see the wisdom of our lives and how they unfold. So I wish you every success with your books, my darling, and also
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We will put your website link down so people can go and have a look for themselves.
Thank you.
Hopefully, when I see you next, I'll be talking about the launch of your next book, which would be lovely.
Thank you. Wishing you a very lovely evening.
Thank you. And of course, we have Collaboration Global guest meetings once a month. So if anybody who's been listening to this podcast would like to come along, you can find us on Eventbrite, or you can find us on collaborationglobal.org on the website to book yourself into either one of our morning sessions or an afternoon session as well. And who knows, you might find Ayo Deforge there as well. And you can have a chat with her at that session. So thank you again for coming, darling. Speak to you soon.
Thank you. Good night.